So I'm doing my mid-month wrap-up. I may end up doing a little bit of coughing in here. I'm going to try not to. But I'm getting over a cold, and I have a dry cough for some reason. So right now I'm like kind of like sucking on a cough drop to see if that helps a little bit. But I know like as I talk, my throat and mouth is going to get dry, so I hope I don't start coughing. So anyways, I'll talk about the first book I got finished for this month in February. So this one here is The Dangerous Lord. This is the part of the Lord Trilogy, Book 3 by Sabrina Jeffries. Now, I read the other ones, and I still have the other ones. Like, the first one was The Pirate Lord, which I still enjoy. I think the other one was The Forbidden Lord, I think. I believe so. And I didn't have this one. So this was like a rebuy. Or I had this one years ago. And I was like, I couldn't remember this story. So I was like, you know what? Let me reread it and see, like, do I still not like it or not? But I actually did enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. So I read this in like early 2000 or something, because it came out, I think it came out in 2000. And I read it like around that time. But like I said, I didn't remember the story, so I was like, let me reread this again. So we got the characters of Ian Leonard, he's the Viscount of St. Clair, and Felicity Taylor. So Ian needs to get married soon because his father set up a thing in his will that Ian needed to be married and have an heir by the age of 30. Otherwise, Ian's scumbag uncle will take over his estate. So he asks a woman named Catherine to marry him, and she tells him that she needs time to think about it. And while he's out at his club, he discovers that the scandal column called Secrets of Society by a Lord X says that Ian has had a mistress for a year in a house. Of course, that is a lie. He finds out where Lord X lives and discovers that Lord X is in fact a woman, and a beautiful one at that. Now, the way it is with his line is obviously normally when the previous, Viscount or whatever it is passes away, it's usually left to the oldest son. Well, I guess it has to be entailed or whatever it is, whatever the legalities are of that. I guess it wasn't entailed. So this is why there was this will where the father was like, you need to get married by this age. I think it's by 30 or something like that. Otherwise, his, the brother would have ended up with it, his uncle. And his uncle's we'll just say he's a shithead. And so, of course, what's his name there? Ian, he wouldn't really care if he has the title himself, because he doesn't really care, because he's, kind of going off and, kind of proved himself in other ways. But he doesn't like his uncle, and he knows his uncle would not do well with the estate. So he's like, I know I have to, do it. So Felicity, she started writing for the newspaper as a way of supporting her and her younger brothers. She has 4. There's her youngest brother that's close to her. He's, I'd say, probably like a tween. Like he's probably between, like, maybe he's like 11, 12, around there. And then she's got younger brothers that are, obviously, they look to her as almost like a mother, because their mother had died in giving birth to them, because it was triplets. And so for them, it's like, yeah, that's a more complicated birth during that time. You know, even today, like, you know, women, you know, can still die of, you know, still die of giving birth and stuff, because it could be, you know, a traumatic experience. You know, a lot of things could happen. So the mother had passed away, and Felicity basically took over the raising of her brothers. And the father was, you know, he was an architect, but he didn't really take the death of their mother, you know, his wife, well, and so kind of made him more do stupid stuff, you know. Like, he ended up falling into the Thames and drowning because he was drunk, and it's like, idiot. Because her father passed away, and he was a renowned architect, but unfortunately didn't leave them any money behind. In fact, he died while being in debt. She took on the alias of Lord X to protect herself from scandal, and Catherine is her friend. She saw St. Clair go into a house with a woman one day and assumed that he was visiting his mistress. Protecting her shy friend, she writes the story that Ian bought a house for his mistress, because she assumed, you know, based on like the information that she was getting, was that he has had obviously previous mistresses in the past. So she made the assumption that that woman he was with was, you know, his mistress. And so Ian and Felicity continue bantering back and forth at an estate party, where he ends up getting her alone on a balcony and kisses her. Like, you know, as soon as like they meet, there's like this obviously attraction, but he obviously has like this a little bit of like animosity toward her, because of the fact that she wrote this scathing, you know, article that made him assume, or made everybody assume, that he had this mistress, when he's like, that's not my mistress, you know. But then when she questions him and say, well, who is the woman? He's like, I'm not going to tell you, because it's like, I swore her to secrecy. I'm not going to tell you who this woman is. And so she's like, well, then I'm going to assume that it's your mistress, you know. And so they kind of go back and forth with each other. And so Ian and Felicity end up over at this basically a state party, you know, where they're going to be there for how many days. And so while they're there, they kind of like bicker back and forth. And yeah, he ends up getting her over to, you know, outside the balcony area. And while they're kind of bickering back and forth, he, you know, kisses her, because he's obviously attracted to her, even though he's like, he wants to wring her neck too, because of, you know, her being Miss Nosy and wanting to intrude on his business. So she makes the assumption again, because she's angry that he potentially compromised her reputation, because they were discovered by a couple of people, but those people, you know, he basically was saying like, oh, nothing untoward happened and everything like that, but obviously, you know, something did. And so she ends up getting mad, and so she was hearing these stories of him being a part of the war, and she thinks that he's doing like stolen valor, like he's just, you know, faking it. Come to find out, he actually was a part of the war. He was more of a spy doing stuff. And so she feels bad, because she ended up writing this article again, and making it sound like he did like stolen valor. And so now she feels bad. And so he ends up like getting her alone again, like in her room, and they start like, you know, making out and stuff, you know, not sex or anything, just making out. And so he ends up getting like discovered in her room. And so now it's like, it makes things even more complicated, you know. So while they're in the room, he's basically like, hey, I'm going to marry you instead, you know, because he's kind of like, I'm attracted to her, you know, why not? You know, I need a wife anyway. And so she kind of has this thing where she's like, she likes him, she's attracted to him, but she's also like, she didn't want to be like second place, you know? And also, like, there were things that happened in her past when her father was still alive that made it to where she was a bit leery of going forward with, you know, getting married to him. So he ends up, like, tying her hands together. Not literally, but, you know, basically tying her hands together. And basically kind of, like, forces her, you know, like, kind of, like, blackmails her in a way to where, like, you're gonna marry me. And so after they get married, he finds out that there were several men who she would go with her father to these houses to do like the architecture, and she would like help assist her father. And come to find out, there was a couple of men who like pushed themselves onto her. And so it made him feel really bad, Ian really bad, because he feels like he's another man that forced himself on her. And so it makes him feel very guilty of the fact that he had basically blackmailed her and forced her hand, you know? And so he feels really guilty about it. And so he was almost at a point where he was going to dissolve the marriage, you know? And he's like, at the point where he was like, I don't care about the title at this point. I don't want her hurt. You know, he really started to care for her. And so I did enjoy this book. I said I had vague memories of this story while I was reading it. I said I did like Ian. He knew ways of seducing her, and then he knew ways of like getting under her skin and things like that, you know? And there were times that Felicity frustrated me. She did frustrate me, but I understood her a little bit more like once I got to understand her background and the things that she had dealt with as a woman, you know, especially like men kind of like uh, you know, like forcing themselves onto a woman and thinking that it's okay to do that, especially when it's like, when it comes to the reputation, it's the woman that ended up getting the harsh end of it rather than the man, you know? So you could tell like the power dynamics, the power structure during that time wasn't good for women. This is why I'm like, you know, during the time here, at least here, you know, in America, women very much have, you know, we have a lot more freedoms today than we did 200 years ago, you know? So you definitely can see how much we have progressed as society, even though women would be like, oh, we're oppressed. And I'm like, if you're in America, no, you're not. You know, no, you're not. Try living in Iran. Try living in other countries where women are subjugated. Women are forced to wear head wrappings and things like that. Then complain. But, you know, here in America, it's like, you are privileged. You know, don't tell me that you are oppressed here. You're not. So you could tell like how much time has progressed when it came to different things. That's why I like reading historical romances, because you can see with the time period how much women didn't, you know, women weren't able to own land, you know, women weren't able to have jobs, you know, women weren't able to have money of their own. We have those freedoms now. We have those privileges now. We have gone a long way. So that's why another reason why I like reading historicals, because I like seeing the progression, and it kind of really makes you appreciate the privileges and the things that we have now rather than back in the day. Like, would I want to go back in the past? Hell no. I would be burned as a witch, you know, which technically isn't accurate. a lot of people will say like the witches were burned at the stake. From what I understand historically, a lot of them were hung, not burned. That's kind of like an inaccuracy. Something I learned recently where I was like, oh, okay, well, that was a lie. So yeah, it's good to brush up on history because a lot of it tends to be inaccurate. You have to get over the old wives' tales and all the stuff like you heard in the movies and different things like that, and be like, no, that's not true, and really kind of delve into the true history of like Salem witch trials, things like that, you know. Anyways, I did enjoy the book, so I decided to keep it this time, because there were some books that I ended up getting rid of years ago, and I think it was because of not having a lot of space, so I think I ended up doing that. But I'm going to keep it this time, because I did enjoy it. Like I said, Felicity did frustrate me at certain times, but I understand, like, at the end, I'm like, I understand where she's coming from. You know, like, I understand her maybe a little bit better now than maybe I did when I read the book years ago. So the next one I read, this was a novella. I read a lot of novellas toward the beginning of February. So this one's The Widow's Auction. So we've got the character of Isabel Lamberton. She's Lady Kingsley. And we got Justin Antony, Lord Warbrook, yeah. So we got references to the myth of, was it Galatea? I don't know if I'm saying that right. And Pygmalion. It was basically the myth of the sculptor who fell in love with his creation. And then you got Aphrodite had brought the statue to life. And this also talks about like sex lessons. So there was like talk of like that, a little bit of that mythology in this book here. So we got Isabel has been a widow for some time, and she runs her husband's charities. And one of them she is the head of is a home for boys. The others running the orphanage want to do this proposal run by Lord Warbrook, to where the children will be working these jobs while they're being educated. And Lady Kingsley thinks it's a horrible idea. They tend to spar back and forth with these different ideas. For the facility, Isabel's one friend, who is a widow as well, convinces her to be a part of a widow's auction where she could be with a man for the night sexually, because while she was with her much older husband, he didn't pleasure her, so she wanted to see what a real lover could do. And so while she's on the auction floor, Lord Warbrook recognizes Isabella's voice and immediately knows it is Lady Kingsley. He doesn't want the companion he's with to win her for the night, so Warbrook bids on Isabel and intends to scold her, but ends up having a passionate night with her, and so they end up falling for each other. You could tell, like, they already had an attraction to each other, but it was more of, like, kind of like one of those, like, hate to love type of things where they annoyed each other with their bickering they would do constantly when it came to the running of that orphanage. She very much wanted these children to get educations and different things like that and have them be in a better situation. Where with him, he was like, well, if they're learning like these different jobs, it'll help them when they get older in like the work field, which in a way, one way I understand where he's coming from, but her past, and she didn't want to admit it, was when she was a child, she worked as in a factory. And so she saw children dying because of it. I think there's a way of like not putting children to work, obviously, when they're children, but putting them in a way of like they're learning a trade, but they're not actually doing the trade, you know, like they're getting like lessons. They're almost like they're ghosting in a way of like learning this, how to do this and how to do that, but not to where they're in danger, you know? It's almost like they're learning a skill without actually being in the field, you know? That's basically what they needed, was to basically learn a trade as children, because it, you know, they absorb really well with learning those things. But to also like not put them in that dangerous aspect, because she knew what it was like to be in that field when she was younger. And she used to like, she would hide her hands, and because she didn't want people to see like her rough hands of like she obviously worked, because you could tell between somebody who was lower class versus the higher class. The higher class obviously had nice soft hands, where lower classes had more roughened hands, and maybe they had scars and different things like that, and you could tell the difference between the two. So she would hide the fact that she was obviously part of the lower classes when she was younger. And the thing that kind of bothered me in this book was the fact that her husband married her at a very young age, of like, she was around, I think maybe 18, 19, around there. Now, I understood why he married her, to obviously put her in a better situation, but I felt like he didn't really need to marry her. He almost could have just sponsored her, you know? Like, he could have taken her under his wing as more of a mentor, and he could have sponsored her to get her like in a higher standing, you know, educated, things like that. Maybe married off to a man around her own age, where this man here was much older than her. I'd say he was like, what, 20 or 30 years older than her. And the reason why he married her is because he wanted an heir, and the other wife he had, you know, didn't give him an heir. And I'm like, 2 barren wives, really? Maybe it's the fact that he was older, you know, because that can affect, you know, as men get older, men usually can still reproduce, but there are some times that men aren't able to reproduce when they get older, you know? So he could have had a very low sperm count, to the point where he wasn't able to impregnate these women because of him being, you know, an older man. Usually, like, what happens is, as males get older, their sperm becomes more, what's the term again? It like becomes more mutated. And so there's more likely chances that men, when they get older, their sperm are not as strong and things like that. I've read about that stuff. Where, you know, if they get together with a woman who's younger, her biology, her DNA, different things like that are going to be like more stronger, gene-wise, than the males are. That's what I heard. I heard like, as males get older, their sperm gets like weaker in a way, like it gets more like deformed and stuff like that. I heard like stuff like that they get more, it mutates or something like that, you know. It gets kind of weird. It's the same thing for like eggs, you know, women's, you know, reproductive eggs. I'm sure over time they get kind of more deformed and stuff, because you're aging, you're getting older. So I'm like, you're not going to be the spring chicken having babies and all that stuff, you know. So maybe it was something like that, you know. And of course, back in the day, they didn't really know about all that stuff, you know. So they're assuming like, oh, if the woman can't reproduce, then she's barren. And it's like, maybe it's not her fault, maybe it's his fault. So she very much was like, she felt lacking in a way because of the fact that she wasn't able to reproduce with her husband, to have a baby. And I'm like, I think it was the husband. I don't think it was her. Even though I think he had a child, but it's like, he had a child that was like when he was younger, you know? So I'm like, it's going to be a completely different thing than how he is as he's older. So that's the thing I didn't like about the fact that her husband, like, she felt grateful to him that he, like, took her on. And he obviously, like I said, there was that whole, like, Pygmalion storyline where he very much, it was like that, where he's kind of taking her and molding her to how he, you know, wants her to be when it comes to, her being a lady, you know, and all that stuff. That's the thing that kind of, like, annoyed me, was the fact that he, like, wanted her to be, like, this perfect lady for him, but she wasn't able to reproduce. So it really messed with her, like, self-esteem and stuff. And so when it came to Lord Warbrook, he did not want to be, like, second fiddle, you know, to her husband. You know, even though her husband's dead, he didn't want her to be, like, constantly, like, always thinking about her husband, you know, and, you know, when they, you know, as they got together. He wanted her to be, like, you know, obsessed with him. Understandable. But then you end up finding out that she really didn't love her husband. It was more of, like, she felt grateful to him for him taking care of her and marrying her and getting her in, like, a higher standing. So it wasn't really the same thing, you know? So once he realized that, and they had, like, a conversation with each other, it really helped with them getting together. So yeah, it was an interesting, that was an interesting book for it being a, you know, novella. So the next book I ended up reading, this was another novella. This was a part of the Duke's Men, which I haven't read yet, series. It's 2.5. So we got, it's Dorinda and the Doctor. I'm seeing if I have I have these old cough drops. I just picked up some new ones, but I have these old menthol cough drops, so these will have to do because I don't want to start coughing. They're kind of getting old, so I'm going to have to throw them away. So, this one here, of course, is another novella. So we have, there's talk of infidelity in here, and there's, like, basically ridiculous healthcare practices that were done in this book. Of course, you know, back in the day, you know, there was a lot of different stuff that they would do that were, I felt like, are horrible, atrocious health practices. So Dorinda and Percy have both been attracted to each other for months, but Dorinda has some past trauma when it comes to doctors, where Percy has been pining away for Dorinda and holding off because he thinks that she is still mourning her husband. One day, the Duchess tells Dorinda to go to the doctor's house. The Duchess and Dorinda have been, like, friendly with each other and friends and stuff, and so Dorinda has been, like, more of, like, kind of like help of the Duchess. So she tells her to go to the doctor's house so she can organize, so Dorinda can organize the doctor's office. What she didn't expect is for Percy to be in there half clothed, like his chest was exposed. I said, this was a very sweet novella. You could see how much Percy pined for Dorinda and how much he just wanted her for herself. He didn't want her to be anything else but herself. So Dorinda had a lot of previous trauma due to her SOB former husband, who only married Dorinda as a broodmare, and when she wasn't reproducing, he blamed her for being inadequate, and Percy reassured her that he wanted her regardless if she could reproduce or not. I loved how Percy was so sweet towards Dorinda. Like, she had a lot of trauma, a lot of past trauma of, like, these doctors doing these ridiculous things to her to try to get her to get pregnant. And some of them were just really stupid. So, of course, she's got this trauma. And even though she sees this doctor and she's attracted to him, she's like, I don't trust him because he's just going to be like another one of these doctors that's going to, you know, think I'm inadequate because I'm not able to reproduce, which it may not be, again, may not be the wife that is inadequate. It could be the husband. So he was kind of like trying to reassure her, like, it may not be you. It may have been your husband. And that really kind of like spiraled her, because she was like, hey, don't give me that hope that, you know, don't give me that hope that I could have a baby, because if I marry you and a baby doesn't come, it's going to make me feel inadequate again. And so he had to, you know, basically convince her like, hey, I want to be with you for you, regardless of if we have a baby or not. He's like, I want to be with you for you. You know, it's okay if you aren't able to have a baby, you know? So he kind of like had to convince her that they were good together, you know? So yeah, I did enjoy that one. It was really cute. But yeah, you could tell like how much she was hurt by her ex, who was a complete prick. You know, dude was a complete prick. Made everything about, you know, like, oh, you're not good enough and all that stuff. Really, like, you know, definitely did like a lot of like emotional abuse toward her. You know, just a real fucking jerk, you know? So he definitely had to do a lot of talking with her to get her to be like, it's not your fault, you know? It's not your fault. He's like, and it's okay if you're not able to have babies. You know, he's like, I still want you for you. So I thought it was really sweet. He really had to like reaffirm to her, like, you know, that she is good enough, you know, and it's okay if you aren't able to have babies, you know. That's not your only function as a woman, is having babies. You know, there's other things about you too. So that's basically what it was with him. It was sweet. I did enjoy that one. And I have to check out I'll have to check out the series too. I am going through Sabrina Jeffries right now for all of her books. I'm trying to get through as many of them as I can, like this month. So when I saw like all these novellas, I was like, oh, I want to check these out. So the next one I ended up getting into, this was The French Maid by Sabrina Jeffries. I gave this one 4. This was more of a short story than a novella. So this is A Marriage in Trouble. So we got Henry and Eleanor Langston. So Eleanor has been married to Henry for a year, but their marriage is very stale. Henry only comes to Eleanor's bed once a week, and it's not as good as it should be. Like, their lovemaking could be better, you know. Also, Henry spends most of his time buried in his work, so he doesn't spend a lot of time with Eleanor either. Then one day, a new French maid, hired by her husband, comes to dress Eleanor, and at first she doesn't want the new maid, but then the maid dresses her more attractive to the point that her husband notices, and that night her and her husband have sex twice. Like, as soon as he saw her, like, she definitely had like makeup, like there was more like things that enhanced her beauty. I'll just say that. Things that enhanced her beauty that the French maid was able to do to make her look more attractive. And it caused him to be like, oh my God, you know, like, she looks great, you know. And of course, you know, it heightened his libido when he normally, like, because he's so engrossed at his work, he doesn't really, you know, get in the mood all the time because he's so busy with work and things like that. Like, definitely he overworks himself. Because I believe with this one here, he wanted to be like a part of Parliament or something like that. I think he wanted to be like in more of a political leanings and things like that. So he was really working hard to kind of get into that aspect, but he definitely was neglecting his wife, you know, like not spending enough time with her, not getting to know her enough. things like that. Like, he still was attracted to her, but he was putting her more on the back burner, you know? And it's like, yeah, I understand, like, your career is important to you, but also is your wife. Like, you married her because you really liked her. So it's like, get to know her, you know, have her help you, you know, that type of thing. That's the whole point of being married, is that you're helpmates, you know? So, they, of course, you know, had sex twice, you know, that night, and that kind of like was a bit, you know, not normal. And so she thinks like, oh, well, like the next day things are going to be better and everything like that. And he kind of like started going back to his old ways again. And it really disappointed Eleanor, to where she got really like dejected from it. And to the point where she was like, maybe I should leave my husband for a little while and take a break away from him. And she basically left to head over to her parents for a little bit. And once he saw that she was gone, he was like, where did she go? And so the French maid basically confronted him and said, hey, you know, stop being a jackass, get your head out of your ass and pay attention to your wife. And first he was kind of like insulted, like, how dare this maid like question me? But once she talked with him, he was like, oh, he's like, yeah, I need to, he's like, he goes, I love my wife. I need to, you know, do right by her. And so when he heard that she was leaving him, and he was like, oh, you know, like devastated, that he chased after her. And so she was actually heading back because she was like, well, I need to talk with him, you know, I need to talk with him. And so they kind of saw each other at like an inn and everything, and kind of like reconciled and talked with a little bit more. And it was quick. It was cute. It was a cute little story. And like I said, and so, you know, like I said, the maid really was the catalyst to kind of like bring them back together, and bring their relationship a little bit closer. And the maid was very much almost like a Mary Poppins. Like, she came in, helped solve things, and now she's like, oh, now I'm going to leave and go and help another family. And that's basically what it reminded me of. It reminded me of like a Mary Poppins, you know? It was a cute story, though. So let's see. The next one that I read, I was not a fan of. This one here, Sabrina Jeffries, this is the Risk of Rogues. This is the Sinful Suitors 5.5. Got the characters of Captain Lord Hartley, he went by Hart Corey, and Anne Barclay. She goes by Lady Anne. So this is a second chance romance. So it said, Hart goes to his brother's estate for a party and is reunited with his first love 11 years ago, or 11 years later, and he still wants to marry her. So I said, this novella was okay, but the heroine annoyed me. She kept being combative, and I found it very frustrating for the hero, especially because he has missed her this whole time, and seeing her again just made him so happy. I said, also, this felt more modern when it came to the heroine, especially her reasoning and thinking that he may want to marry her due to her higher status now. So her father inherited this title. And I said, get over yourself, lady. She really annoyed me because he was willing to marry her before he was a captain, because he went off to the military. Before he was a captain, he was willing to marry her. And he was like, I don't care if, like, you know, if she doesn't have like a title or anything like that. I love her. And so, of course, for them, it was like, it was a young love, especially for her. She was 16. And I was like, I was very young. Like, she was very young and immature. And so I was like, yeah, she definitely needed to grow more as a character because she was very immature. You know, 16 is, I don't know, to me, not old enough to get married. Definitely not. And so she really annoyed me because she was like, oh, well, he didn't want to marry me because my parents, like, basically forbidden him. And it was like, no, he wanted to marry her, still marry her, because he was like, well, I'm in a better financial situation now. You know, it's like I could take care of her financially. And so that's why he still, you know, wanted to marry her, be with her. Where her, she was like, oh, well, do you want to marry me now because now I'm a lady? And it's like, you know, so like, come on, lady. Come on. He wanted to marry you before, dumbass. You know, so why, like, all of a sudden you becoming a lady is going to make him like, oh, I want to marry you even more. And it's like, yeah, it just really annoyed me. She's like, oh, I don't want these fortune hunters. And it's like, he's a captain. He's a captain. He's making some kind of money. You know, come on. Yeah, she annoyed me, and it really made me frustrated in the story, you know, especially because I'm like, this guy's been pining for her for 11 years. 11 years. You know, he didn't want to be with anybody else. He didn't want to marry anybody else. He still pined away at her. So when he saw her at the, you know, this house, this estate, it was like I think it was like almost kind of like a hunting cabin or whatever it is, something like that. And he was like, oh my God, I finally had my chance to see her again. And he wrote her letters. He wrote her letters, but she wasn't able to get them. So yeah, I very much felt like he kind of like gave his all to like try to like keep the relationship going. And she kind of like, you know, was like, oh well. And I was like, I did not like her as a character. So the other book I read by Sabrina Jeffries, this is A Talent for Temptation. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. And this was a novella. This is part of the Sinful Suitors. This is 4.5. We got the characters of Muriel Weiss and Quinn Rains. So Quinn and Muriel have been having a flirtation with each other for months, kissing and making out. But Muriel's afraid to move forward due to her working for her brother-in-law as a spy. So Quinn's family owns banks, and Muriel thinks her spying will affect Quinn's family name. So she doesn't want him like getting involved with all her spy work, and she thinks it's gonna mess up like his family and stuff. So one day Muriel goes out to get into her carriage when a man tries to kidnap her. She pulls out her knife, and when she goes to stab the kidnapper, Quinn comes to rescue her, and he ends up getting stabbed in the arm. Feeling extremely guilty, Muriel brings Quinn into the house and tends to his wound herself. So I said, I enjoyed this quick novella. Both of them needed something to get the relationship to move forward, and the attempted kidnapping was the incident they needed. You could see how much Quinn didn't care about her humble beginnings. He just wanted her. Yeah, she came from a very different aspect. So with him, he had set up the kidnapping, like this fake kidnapping, because he wanted to be the one to rescue her, to kind of like, basically kind of convince her that he was good enough to be her husband. You know, he wanted to prove himself to her. But unfortunately, she could very much take care of herself and ended up stabbing him in the arm. And so he realized his mistake was the fact that, one, she could take care of herself, and two, he was stupid for even attempting to come up with this fake kidnapping. And, you know, he had good intentions, but it wasn't done right. So he ends up, like, confessing to her that he was the one that, you know, came up with the kidnapping. And, of course, she was mad from that. But also she has, like, this sense of loyalty to her brother-in-law, because he basically saved her from a bad situation. She was a maid at an estate when this man was trying to sexually assault her. And so her brother-in-law, who's a spy, he ended up stopping the incident. And of course she got fired from it. And so he told her like, hey, you know, you can come stay with me and I'll give you a job. And so she felt very grateful to it. So he basically hired her on as like a spy to help him with his cases and stuff. And so she was very grateful to him. And she ended up marrying his brother for like basically like a job, you know. It was like under a job. They went and got married. And she cared for, you know, his brother, you know, for her husband. She cared for him. But she didn't love him, you know. He did a lot of reckless things, did a lot of dangerous stuff, and it ended up getting him killed, was the spying. And so she kind of feels this sense of like guilt that she couldn't stop him from, you know, getting into these dangerous situations. But she also has a sense of like loyalty, you know, to her brother-in-law, and be like, oh, well, I can't stop the spying, even though she wanted to stop, you know, she didn't want to do it anymore. And so she had this sense of guilt, like, well, I'm going to feel bad, you know, if I tell him I don't want to do it anymore. So basically, Quinn had like convinced her, like, you know, if you don't want to do this anymore, you know, you need to just stop and just tell your brother-in-law, you know, what's happening. And so she finally had gotten the courage to like tell her brother-in-law, which I can't remember the guy's name. He was like a spy throughout the series. And he has a book of his own. So he ends up like, her brother-in-law ends up telling her like, if you don't want to do this anymore, don't, you know, you don't have to, you know, you're not, he's like, I did it to help you. He's like, it doesn't mean you have to like be grateful to me your whole life. You know, he's like, go live your life, you know, go be happy, you know. He just wanted her to be happy. So I thought he's a very commendable character. And I liked Quinn because you could see like, he was like, yeah, my family, you know, we own banks, but he's like, we're very, we you know, he basically was like, we have humble beginnings, you know. It's like, we didn't always have money, you know. So he's like, it's okay if you come from humble beginnings, you know. He's like, that's fine. He goes, that doesn't bother me. He's like, I just want you. I just love you. So I thought that was very sweet. I thought it was a very sweet story. So the next ones I'll talk about are my DNFs that I did this month. Now, one of the DNFs was a Sabrina Jeffries novella. This one here really just annoyed me. So this is The Heiress and the Hothead. And this is part of the Sinful Suitors. This is 1.5. So I said, I DNF'd this one. I said, Lord Stephen Corey and Amanda Keene. So it's an English reporter and American mill owner. So I said, DNF this around 20%. I just didn't like the characters, and the subject matter made me sad because it was basically talking about the treatment of workers that work in mills and the dangers they had to go through and all that stuff. Like, work has drastically gotten better when it comes to the treatment of employees and different things like that. Like, there was obviously very dangerous work situations, things like that back in the day. Children were, you know, working these mills too, and they were getting killed. And so basically he was a reporter that was reporting about these dangerous conditions and trying to like open the door of this and kind of get like maybe either these mills to get shut down or get them to where they had to change their practices and make things safer for their employees. So that's what he was trying to do. And so the lady, she was an American, you know, kind of like heiress, and her father, she inherited her father's mill. And so she wanted to like basically get things and make sure that the employees were getting treated well and all that stuff. And I really just didn't understand them. They're butting their heads. and all that stuff, and it just really annoyed me, like her character. And like I said, with him too, it's like he kind of annoyed me too, where I was like, I don't really like either one of these characters. And like they made these assumptions about each other, and it's like, you're making these assumptions about, why don't you communicate and talk with each other? Because maybe then you'd be like, oh wait, we're on the same page here. We both want to make sure that these workers are getting, you know, treated well by their employees, you know, or their employers, you know. So it kind of felt like you guys are fighting for the same thing. What's the bickering? What's with the bickering? I don't get it. So yeah, I really was like annoyed with it, and I just was like, ugh, I'm just gonna DNF it. So this one here, I wasn't feeling it. It's Valerie Bowman, The Footman and I. It's the Footman's Club trilogy. I don't know if I want to go and try this one again, but I wasn't really feeling it. So yeah, it says, when a spirited activist falls for a footman, will love survive when she learns he's really the Earl behind the cause she opposes? I just wasn't really feeling the writing and everything, and I'm like, I'll try another book from this author because I have a couple more on my Kindle. I'll try to get into another book and see if maybe it was just that one-off. But if not, then this author isn't for me. But yeah, I wasn't really feeling this one. And it was like at the beginning, I just was like, I don't know what it is, but I'm just not feeling this book. So I DNF'd that one really quick. It was like a few pages, and I was like, not feeling this. So the next one was Fight by Sloane St. James. I wasn't feeling this one either. So I DNF'd this at 16%. The dude got cheated on and proceeded to be a man whore for 5 years. I really didn't care for that. So then he meets Prescott Scotty, because her name's Prescott Scott, but she goes by Scotty. And I'm like, Prescott's such a dude name. I don't understand why they named their daughter more of a male name. And all he keeps thinking about is like having sex with her. It just was like very superficial. And I was just like, dude, I don't like you. Oh, I said, also the amount of information on wildfires just bored me. I said, I live in a state that has wildfires practically every year, so I would have preferred not getting a ton of information on them. It just was like, it talked a lot of the wildfires and all this different stuff and all this preparation they do and everything. And I'm just like, okay, but I'm like, I really just don't care. I'm like, can we like move on with the storyline of the plot point of this couple, you know? Because she was like an EMT, and so she ends up like working in the same area as him. And so it got to the point where I'm like, oh, they see each other and again, and he was like, oh, you're like an EMT. And she's like, yeah. And so they were like, like just talking about hooking up and everything. And I was just like, I'm not feeling this. I just was not feeling it. And I was like, no, I'm DNFing this one. The next one I DNF'd this month was Oops, I Summoned a Demonic Merman by Naomi Lucas. I could not get into this. It was too weird. It was too weird. I couldn't focus on it. Lately, when it comes to like monster romances or even like fantasy, things like that, I cannot focus on it. I cannot focus on it. I've been like just really not wanting to be interested in fantasy or romantasy or anything like that. Fantasy related, not interested. Not lately. It just doesn't interest me. Urban fantasy I can do. But like anything that's high fantasy or romantasy, I'm just like, yeah. And same thing with like the monster romances. Lately I just haven't been interested in them. And so this one here, I'm just like, I couldn't get into the story. It was too weird. Like, I don't even remember what the heck it was about. Oh, yeah, he was a merman. That's what it was. Yeah, one moment I'm within my domain in the abyss, and the next she's in front of me with a steam cleaner in her hand. Her name is Grace, but I'm in no threat of falling. Feeling hexed, says, with her, I've ascended on land. Now she wants to get rid of me. Yeah, she was like... I think it was... She was cleaning or something? I think she was cleaning. I think the story was... Oh, I think if I remember now. Her mother owned some type of, like, cabin, I think. And there were, like, witches who were there. And they like, summoned... I think they summoned him. And she ended up finding him there. And it was weird because all of a sudden, like, her eyes just started leaking, like, fluid. And she couldn't see anything. And then he needed water, so he starts licking her eyes and her face. And I'm just like, this is weird. I'm like, this is too fucking weird for me. So I could not get into it. The next one I tried to read, I ended up DNFing this around 16%. It was just, couldn't get into it. It says, oh no, there's an incubus in my hot springs by Ember Holt. So I DNF'd around 16% or so. I couldn't get into this. The heroine catches her boyfriend cheating on her, which I'm really tired of reading in romance books. I've been running into a bunch of them lately, where at the beginning of the book there is a cheating scene. I said, how about we have something different? Like the couple realize that they want different things, so they just break up. You know, there's those things too where it's like we're going our separate ways. Why does it always have to be a cheating trope it starts out with? You know, and I'm like, this is so boring. I'm like, I see so many of these romances lately where it's like the chick finds the guy and he's effing some other chick, and I'm just like, I'm so tired of romances like that lately. Says, so she decides to use her money she got of selling her company to go and buy a hot springs. So when she gets there, she realizes that she bought a fixer-upper. I said, why? She is smart enough to create a company so great she was able to sell it to someone else, then is dumb enough to buy a place sight unseen because she was drunk when she bought it. And it's like, maybe go there and look at the place before you buy it. No, she's like, oh, well, the pictures, they look nice. I'm going to buy this. And it's like, so you were smart enough to create a company so great that someone else bought it from you and you made a good profit from it. And then you decide to buy a place just from photos. It doesn't seem you're very smart. It doesn't seem you're very smart. So when she gets there, I already said that. So while she meets an incubus, while there, she meets an incubus who needs her pleasure in order to be seen. Like, he needs to be corporeal, otherwise he's kind of like invisible. So in order for him to be seen and all that stuff, he has to use her pleasure, no matter what it is. He says, oh, it doesn't have to be sex. He goes, it could be other things. So the next day, she allows him to touch her. And this is the next day of her being freaked out at first. And then she's like, oh, I'm going to allow him to touch me. She allows him to touch her, and they basically dry hump. But she doesn't allow kissing. I said, but lets him touch her everywhere else, and she's riding his peen over the clothes, but kissing is too intimate. Sure. So someone I know had commented and said, the whole we can do everything but kiss because that's too intimate thing drives me bananas. Exactly. I get so annoyed with it because I'm like, why? Why is kissing too intimate, but having sex or doing other things is not? I'm trying to work that in my mind. I just don't understand that aspect to it, where I'm like, how does that make sense? Kissing is too intimate? I would say kissing is less intimate than the P and the V. Some of these people, I feel like they try to act like sex is just not a big deal. When it's like, for most women, sex is it could be a very emotional thing. You know, men are men, and men can treat it as just sex, a bodily function. They don't need to love the girl in order to have sex with her. Where usually with women, it's more of an intimate thing. It's more mental. So I don't understand, like, let's dry hump, but oh, don't kiss. It's very strange to me. I don't normally kiss people either, but it's like, I don't know, maybe you could kiss somebody on the cheek or be okay with kissing someone on the lips. As you know, like, I could see maybe like French kissing might be more intimate. You can kiss somebody on the lips and have it be a sexual thing and not have it be intimate, you know? Where having someone inside your body, that's definitely more intimate. So I really just didn't understand her concept of, like, no kissing. I've seen this before in romances. It annoys the fuck out of me. It really does. Because I'm like, hello, how is kissing more intimate? It doesn't make sense to me. I'm gonna spit out this. The ending was getting kind of weird with the candy, because this here, like I said, it's getting old, so it was getting kind of weird. So yeah, that is just, it makes no sense to me. It makes no actual sense to me that. And like I said, the next day, they're doing that. The next day, it's like she doesn't even hardly know. And it's like, it's not like this is a novella. This is a novel. This is like a book where it was like 5 hours left of this book. And I'm just like, they're already doing this when we got like 5 hours left of this book. I'm like, what else are they going to be doing in this book that's going to expand this plot, this story, the relationship? Because I kind of feel like they're getting too fast, you know? And I was just like, what the hell is going on here? So yeah, I just was really not liking it. And I was like, no, I am good. And so yeah, I just was like, nope, I'm done. And this one, last one, was a very quick one. I was maybe like, at the beginning, I probably shouldn't have marked this as DNF. I should have just erased it from my thing. But I kind of like, it kind of lets me know, when I put something on a DNF, it lets me know, don't touch this. No. Get away from this one. This one here was Bink Cummings' Property of Necro. I instantly DNF'd this as soon as I delved in, because I realized it's a reverse harem. This is like an MC romance, but it's a reverse harem. Okay. First of all, MC romances are kind of hard for me to get into. I still try to give them a chance, even though I have a lot of issues with MC romances. If anybody doesn't know, MC romances are usually like motorcycle club romances. I usually don't like those types of romances a lot because the men usually treat the women like shit, or they treat like, they're essentially, some of these ladies that hang out with these motorcycle club men, a lot of them I would consider them to be sort of like puck bunnies, you know, or cleat chasers, where they have no problem sleeping with multiple of the men. You know, they go around like a bicycle, basically, for this motorcycle club. And the thing I don't like about it is that, yes, these women are doing that, which I'm like, I really don't have respect for the women who do that. But, you know, it's your body, your choice. But the thing that annoys me, it's like, these men choose to have sex with these women. So it's a two-way street. If you're going to call them sluts, why have sex with them? Why? That's my problem I have with, you know, with it. It's like, yeah, these ladies are going to have sex with the men, but if you don't pull your peen out of your pants, then you're not having sex with them. They're not getting what they want from you because you're not giving it to them. So, I don't know, for men, maybe don't be a slut yourself. There's a thought. So yeah, for me, I'm like, when it comes to motorcycle romances, I already have a hard time delving into them, but I still try to give them a chance because I'm like, well, maybe this one will be good. But as soon as I saw it was like, it's going to be reverse harem, I was like, oh, hell no. Nope. I'm like, I don't know why I even chose that one. I obviously didn't see that it said reverse harem on it because I hate reverse harem. I really do. I don't like harem romances. I don't want it where it's like the dude's effing multiple women. But I don't like it when it's like women with multiple men. I'm not a fan. Not a fan. I don't like it. You know, like I said, the chick is like like the town bicycle. You know, I just was like, no. I don't have respect for that. You know, like, the older I get, the more I'm like, I don't know, maybe be a little bit more prejudiced on who you have sex with. There's a thought, you know. You know, I know for me, like, I've had, you know, I have regrets of, like, different individuals I've had sex with over the years. That I'm like, yeah, maybe I should have been a little bit more prejudiced and said no. So I think, like, when you develop more confidence in yourself, you know, you realize that maybe you shouldn't have did, like, certain things, you know. And I definitely don't have the numbers that some women know, and some women do. I definitely do not have those numbers behind me that some other women do. But still, it's like, you know, maybe if you were a little bit more confident in yourself when you were younger, you would have chose better, you know? Especially my ex, you know, like, I could have chosen way better. But I don't regret my children. I love my babies. I do not regret my children. I just regret who I had them with. So I'll just say that. So the last book, this one here, I'm currently reading. This is one that I had said last year that I wanted to get through, that I put in my 10 books that I wanted to get through for 2025. Unfortunately, I did not get through this one. This one here, it says, I think it said it was historical fiction. I think that's what it said it was. Historical fiction. So this one's Heart in the Highlands by Heidi Kimball. I'm not that much into the book. This one here is like a forced marriage. Let me see, what am I in? I'm about 8% in, and I have 8 hours and 29 minutes left in the book. So, both the characters are essentially in a marriage that they're kind of forced into going into it. Excuse me. Let me see. It's an arranged marriage was never what Callum Darrington, future Duke of Edenbane, imagined for himself, but with the well-being of his uncle's family hanging in the balance, Callum strikes a bargain with his father and reluctantly agrees to tie himself to a stranger. The reality of the lovely Lady Catherine is more than he could have hoped for, and their wedding heralds a bright new future for the couple. Until Callum discovers his father deliberately deceived him, Callum lashes out, setting in motion heartbreak not even he could have foreseen. 4 years later, Callum is ready to piece together the marriage he so carelessly destroyed, but their years apart have hardened. She is not the naive and trusting young woman she once was, and she has no intention of allowing Callum a foothold in her life or her heart. Despite her coldness, Callum works to regain her trust and rebuild their marriage, not realizing Kate harbors a secret that could change everything, and this time there is much more at stake than just her heart. So, both of the characters right now have it to where Callum very much detests his father. His father's a duke. Very much detests his father. His father's like, you need to marry, otherwise, I'm going to make things very hard for you. And so Callum's like, fine, even though he's like raging against it, he's like, fine, I'll marry this woman. I don't know who she is, but I'll marry this woman. And his mother is more from humble beginnings. His uncle, this all takes place in Scotland. His uncle, his aunt, and like his cousin, they're like more like farmers and stuff like that. So he tries to help them out and stuff. And so, sorry, I need a nap. He tries to help them out. And so he decides, okay, I'll marry this woman. So he's helping out his uncle because it's raining really bad, and he's gonna, the uncle will end up losing like these sheep, and these are more of like pricier sheep because I guess they're smaller and stuff. And so you would think they're smaller, they'd be cheaper. But I guess they're more of a different type of breed of sheep. And they probably produce like maybe a nicer wool. Maybe that's probably why. So they're, he's trying to help out his uncle. He ended up saving his uncle from basically drowning. And so while he's there, his wife, or soon-to-be wife, ends up making it to their cottage because she's having trouble getting to the estate. The reason why she's getting married is because her grandfather is dying. I'm assuming he might be dying of like tuberculosis, which at that time it was considered consumption, until we knew what the heck it was, So now we get like TB shots and all that stuff, So she ends up having to get married because her grandfather doesn't want her to be, by herself, So he basically tells her like, hey, marry this man. He seems like a good man, and get yourself into a better standing. And so she meets, and I'm at the point where she meets him at like this cabin, and he's like, oh, I'll take you back to the estate. And they like meet, and they seem like they're like friendly with each other, but obviously something happens and causes some kind of like rift where he leaves for 4 years. So it's pretty good so far. It's pretty decent. You could tell like he absolutely hates his father and doesn't want anything to do with the marriage, but he's like, once he meets her, he's like, oh, she seems attractive. She's cute. She seems very nice. So he's kind of like, oh, maybe this won't be bad after all, kind of thing, So I'm kind of like at that point, not very much into the book, but so far I am enjoying it. It is decent. So we'll see what happens. I believe this one here is, it might be more of a fade to black or a clean romance. I don't believe there's any intimacy on page with this book. But I wanted to see if this author was any good, because to me, I'm like, if long as it's a romance and it's a good romance, intimacy is just a, intimacy on page to me is just a bonus. As long as it's a good romance, then I'm fine. I don't need sex on page, it's okay. So that's what I'm reading so far. So we'll see how it is. I am trying to delve into, there's one audiobook I was going to delve back into. I'm hoping I can kind of get my head to do it. But I'm hoping I can kind of, excuse me. I'm hoping I can get into some audiobooks. Because I want to delve into this one here. I had started, but I ended up like putting it on the back burner, was Ready or Not by Kara Bastone. They have an audiobook for it, so I wanted to listen to the audiobook. The heroine, she ends up getting pregnant. It was kind of like a one-night stand thing, and I think it was her friend's brother, I think. He's interested in her, and so I think it like starts a relationship with them. It sounded like a sweet story, and so I wanted to check it out. So I tried getting into it last year, but I wasn't able to, and I'm like, you know what, let me try to delve into the audiobook and get through it and see if that will help. See if the audiobook will help. So I'm gonna hopefully get through to that one this month. Hopefully I can get to that, because it says I'm currently reading it on Goodreads, even though I'm technically not. But yeah, I want to delve into that this month and get through it. And there's also some other audiobooks that I have on my audiobook app that I was able to download that I'm like, I need to listen to, that are more Sabrina Jeffries ones. So I figured I can get through more of my Sabrina Jeffries a little bit quicker. But I want to get through all the rest of the books I have of hers, just to be like, do I keep these ones? Which ones do I not like? I didn't like the story, that I'll get rid of. And then I could put them all on my shelf and then move on to another author. Like I said, this year, I want to get through a good number of my physical copies that I have of my historical romances. And I do have a good number of historical romances on my Kindle currently that I need to get through too. So I'm trying to get through more of my historicals because I have a ton of them, and they're, the first ones I delved into when I got into romance. I love historicals as long as they're done right, then I love them. And I have not been enjoying a lot of like contemporary romances lately. I haven't been enjoying a lot of them lately. They've been really annoying me. And same thing when it comes to like monster romances or other things. I'm just kind of like, ugh. I kind of feel ugh right now when it comes to it. Not enjoying myself. So I'm like, well, let me delve into some historicals, because I love historicals. Like I said, as long as they're done right, then I'm good, So I was like, let me delve into those and see if those will kind of like, help. But I kind of feel like romances lately have been really lacking. Really lacking. So I'm hoping that with more of the historicals, I'll feel a little bit better, about reading those. And this month, I'm going to try to get into something that isn't, something that is not a romance. Like I said, I try to get into at least one book that is not a romance. And I did pick up some more Stephen King books. And also I picked up some other horror books. So I was like, well, let me see if I can find another audiobook or possibly an ebook. There was something I recently picked up that was an ebook. What did I pick up? I might delve into that. What did I pick up recently? That is not a romance. Well, I picked up A Wrinkle in Time. I do want to read that. That is not a romance. I could check out that one. What was the other one? Oh, this one here by Stephen Graham Jones. It's a short story. It's called Mapping the Interior. Maybe I'll read that one. It's a horror. And then this other one, That's Not My Name by Megan Lally. That was a Kindle Unlimited too. I'm going to see if maybe that might be interesting. And then there's also this one that's called Ask for Andrea by Noelle W. Ihli. I-H-L-I. I don't know. Ihli. That looked interesting. I saw that on at Barnes & Noble, and I'm like, oh, I love the cover. But I have not been wanting to pick up books lately because I'm like, what if I don't like it? You know? I've been trying not to pick up physical copies lately. But yeah, those ones right there, I was like, you know what? Let me check it out. And there's another one too I had recently downloaded. I think it was cheap. I bought it. That looked interesting. I love the cover. But yeah, I'm gonna see if I could delve into some maybe other ebooks that I have that are not romance, so I could try to open up my horizons a little bit. I've been really trying to read some other genres besides romance lately, because like I said, romance novels lately have been disappointing me. So I'm like, I just want to read something that gives me a good story, you know? So I was like, even if it's not a romance, it's something that gives me a good story. That's an interesting book, you know? So anyways, not to keep yapping, because I know these videos are long and people probably get bored with them. That's pretty much it for this video here. Also, if anybody ever wanted me to do anything else, like showing other things, like, oh, I got this, you know, I wanted to try it and see if it's any good. My husband's co-worker had recently went to Korea, and I brought back candy. And so I thought that was cool. So we got these gummy dinosaurs. And then this here is it's obviously gummies. You could feel it. It feels soft. So I'm like, these are obviously gummies too. And then these, you know, I thought they were cute. So I was like, you know, if anybody ever you know, says, hey, you know, if you got any candy you want to try, I could always do that. At the beginning, be like, hey, I found these candies and I'm going to try these, you know. Let me know that you want to see that. And I have no problem doing that. You know, if I get any new candy, anything new to me, like, oh, these are really good, try these, you know, let me know. But yeah, that's it for this video here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves, be kind to each other, and I will see you all on the next video. All right, bye.